ExxonMobil has moved to a visual way of working. Planning, scoping, troubleshooting, design. You know what they all have in common? You gotta take measurements. Did you know that used to be a full-time job for us here at ExxonMobil for someone to take those measurements?
For us, the goal is to democratize capture, to have always up-to-date, always available digital twins or digital assets of our facilities.
The minute you start visualizing something, you just want to start labeling things. You start wanting to tie other data integrated with it.
Create a digital thread. What, when, where, and why. All of those things are not just possibilities, they are necessities.
Once all that checks off, let's scale it. Let's accelerate it.
Let's build standard practices to be able to actually go to scale across the company.
I actually code video games on the side. I actually do modeling on the side. These are my hobbies. I didn't know I can actually make a career out of this.
The biggest thing that we're trying to do here is we're both trying to be influenced by the industry, but also influence the industry on what are some of the pain points we're having to help solve it together.
What is the foundation for that 3D model? What are the inefficiencies? Let's discover that together. Then let's find that technology. Let's work on these processes. Let's collaborate across the organization and prove that out.
That is literally what we're doing here, is bringing extra layers of context to information that may exist or may not already exist.
Just take a picture of it and then align it with what was planned to know exactly this is already installed. This is not installed. We are delayed. We're off by this amount of measurements and so forth. It almost like gives you superpowers.
The whole goal is you get more context. You instantly get more context. This is the beauty. This is where we're moving towards, is reality first, spatial first, information that all gets tied together based off control.
This is reality.
It's possible. It's not just possible. It is happening.
Man, this is an awesome venue.
I know, it's beautiful.
All right. We'll start with introductions real quick, but you guys are here for us to talk about the digital reality ecosystem 3.0. My full name is Athicha Dhanormchitphong, truncated all the way to just M. It's a nickname my mom gave me, but it's a whole nother story. I've been with the corporation for about 20 years. 10 of it was really in development, while the other 10 was in R&D. My current role is the digital reality ecosystem architect.
And my name is Kyle Daughtry. My friends just call me Kyle. So we'll go with that. I've been with Exxon 16 years or so, I think.
No, he keeps going backwards every time we introduce
I swear I probably do. 16 years or so, a bunch of different technical and digital roles. Where I'm at right now is the XR and Digital Twin product manager. So we're here, like Em mentioned before, to talk to you a little bit about what we're calling this digital reality ecosystem, but more importantly, the parts in the small letters, I don't know why we did that, of how we're actually moving ExxonMobil to a more visual way of working. And really that's both from a process and a technology, actually more so from a process perspective than technology overall.
All right, so for the folks that were here last year, right, we gave really an overview of what we started to do inside the company. And so obviously for the new folks that are here as well, and just the folks that are returning, we want to provide you an overview or a recap as well. So that way, what are you guys talking about? Well, let's start off with what are we planning to do? And then from there, we'll get to really how we've figured out what is foundational work, as well as how do we accelerate our use cases. People have been asking us plenty of times, well, show something. And so we would like to share that as well. So we're going to show some use cases in action, right? Talk about that. And then we're going to jump into why we chose reality first. I think it makes sense, obviously, here in this platform. And then we don't have everything figured out. We do want to share, but there are some things that we've identified that we just haven't figured out. And it's one of the reasons we're out here as well, is just to share that broadly to see if somebody else has figured that out as well. That's the call to action.
All right, so to start with that overview, if y'all were listening to that panel that we had 2 sessions ago around the digital twin and the metaverse, for us, we are not trying to redefine what the digital twin is. Again, there's 255 different variants out there, but what we did was try to pull together what we're calling the components of a digital twin for our industry overall. And really, it takes on the aspect of these 3 areas in the Venn diagram. From the top left-hand side, from simulation to modeling, some of the stuff that's bread and butter to the company and actually how we can monetize our product and we're able to survive in the industry, down to data aggregation. So again, there's a lot of work on top of that left area. And the data aggregation side on the bottom part, pulling together, our ERP systems, our process monitoring info, engineering, inspection, you name it, equipment info. There's a bunch of really good efforts inside the company that are trying to harmonize all of that data. In the top right-hand corner, though, prior to us putting this, this pull together, there wasn't a lot of work in how to actually bring the visualization together with the data and the simulation side of the world. And so that's been kind of our big mantra so far, is how do we pull these things closer together? The goal for us is not that everything is going to hit the center, right? Not every asset's going to hit the center, but try to move data maturity in each one of these areas closer to the center. So I can manage reality. I can manage a set of digital twins at scale across all of our facilities.
Wait, don't change it yet.
Yeah, go back.
I love analogies. So
he's an analogy man.
Did it last year, do it again this year, right? If you take that Venn diagram, look at that blue part, the visualization side, right? How many folks here utilize Waze or Google Maps? Cool, I do too.
That's a lot.
Especially, we're from Texas, and so this is a new place for us. Well, we got familiar last year, but different locations. So we had the map, really where we are and how do we get there. So that visualization, just like Google Maps or Waze, that's the map that you visualize on your phone. The data aggregation piece, that's the live traffic flow. The red light cameras, right? The speed and so forth. And then the simulation and modeling piece, right? If I needed to get to the Morris Center, either by car or by foot, by train or by air, whatever, right? Based on historical data, I probably need to leave 10, 20 minutes ahead of schedule to get here from an Uber. Until actually, Josh introduced us to Lime on a scooter, and you actually can get here in about 10 minutes with the scooter on campus. But really, those three are, that's a really good example for us, really, so for that Venn diagram. Previous state of visual data. You're not supposed to look in details, but the whole point is.
Does that picture resonate with people? Like, raise of hands? Yeah. Okay, cool.
It's just that's us. That's us. The baby is ExxonMobil. The spaghetti is our data. And Kyle talked about it during the panel, right? But 10 years of work. And over the 10 years of work, we kept going back to our whiteboard. And we started mapping out where data was flowing. We zoomed out one day. And that's what we got. And we had there's a bigger problem. What is the root cause? And we started bucketizing them from how is your visual data being captured? Where is it currently being stored? How do you deliver it so that way you can consume it anytime, anywhere, as he mentioned before. And once we were able to create those 4 pillars, we started talking to the sites to really understand globally, right? How are you capturing that visual data? Oh, well, I'm using mobile scanners, I'm using terrestrial scanners, I'm taking drone shots, photogrammetry, 360s, right? I get my CAD model design, download it, they're being delivered to me and so forth. Well, where are you storing them? Oh, well, it's on this website. I just gotta type in this browser, I'll show you my 3D model. I got a bag full of external hard drives, right? So I got these labels on them. Let me go through them, I'll show you, right? They're in the land share. Oh, we own our 3D model. It's in this PDF file. Oh, okay.
Real life scenario, right? Like a site super excited coming back to us saying, hey, I've got my model, my component model.
Hey, yeah, and how are you using this? I'm using it for training, emergency prepared response, planning, scoping. I mean, the use cases just go on. And so what applications are you utilizing? All of these applications. And so there was a really deep problem for us. The bottom line, prevent digital reuse. We were paying over and over and over.
3, 4, 5 times, same location, same scans.
Yeah, we've had even third parties wait for the other one to complete a capture while the other one then scanned the same unit as well, right? Not even talking to each other internally about, I am going to capture the data. Where is that? How do I use that as well? And so there was a really big problem. I mean, think about even just, well, if I wanted to transfer that data, and the PCs back then, the applications, the licenses, the time it took to get that data over to a high-end machine back then, only to find out that was the wrong model. Got to start over again. And there were some really low-hanging fruits, and there was a lot of pain and frustrations across sites, right? And so that's really describes that spaghetti diagram for us.
So M, gets to hit on the previous state, or ultimately like the chaos that's out there. This is actually what we came up together on how we're pushing forward to an open, interoperable asset digital twin. And it really breaks itself into these 5 different areas, 4 different pillars and 5 different things. So capture, store, deliver, consume. It's such a just simplistic thing. But whenever we set those boundaries that there's data ownership and transition between each of those, it actually it changed the whole thought process inside the company. It's the wildest thing. It's just 4 columns, right? And then there's these 5 pieces around there, right? 1, for us, the goal is to democratize capture. So how do I allow people to capture information faster and easier? Yes, that is going to happen, right? The goal is to have always up-to-date, always available digital twins or digital assets of our facilities, right? So we have to speed that up. It has to be able to happen as fast as possible. I have to be able to pop out my phone and scan something for things that are not dimensionally accurate that I need to do work on, and be able to actually pop that into the same set of data that I have that is controlled, right? All of those things are not just possibilities, they are necessities to be able to get to scale and do MOC over time. So democratize that capture. Second to that, in that whole storage and transition part, is how do we separate software from data? Now, I don't think there's probably a lot of people that are familiar with OPA, or the open process automation work that's happened across a lot of the industrial companies, but that big goal then at that point in time was separate hardware from software, which was perfect, right? It allows you to use any particular tool to capture any amount of information at any point in time. Beautiful. Goal for us now is to shift and say, separate software from data. So same thing, I go out there and capture, I store it into a location that's completely agnostic from the tool. I use it in 5 different tools. I'm able to do my work as a maintenance tech, or I'm able to do a turnaround plan, or I'm able to do an emergency response plan off same data sets. That's the big push. Number 3, allow plug and play integrations of information. So that's pretty straightforward. We have to be able to integrate all the extra data that comes along with managing an asset. A scan of a facility or even a CAD model is not a digital twin at the end of the day. I mean, it is a digital asset, but all of the information that comes together with that, and be able to do that agnostically, that's a big piece whenever you're trying to move towards reality first. 4, we like to just call this anytime, anywhere. How I mentioned it before, for training, for emergency response planning, for turnaround planning, same data set should be able to go across all. And we have those, instances of those things happening right now. And then 5th, create a digital thread, right? What, when, where, and why at the end of the day. So you have to track all of that information to be able to have this interoperability, to be able to reuse the data. Em mentioned before, old state not allowing reuse, future state and where we're going is absolutely digital reuse of that information. So many different use cases from same data.
It was really a journey last year, because we were just focusing on trying to separate that software from data on the visual way, right, Kyle? Somewhere along the line, we started realizing, well, if we're going to create a true digital reality, you really had to think about where things are accurately, right? And when it was captured. It comes down to that scalability for us. our mission is to corporate scale and integrate platforms, right? As Kyle mentioned before, I mean, there's always going to be digital twin platforms. There's going to be more coming out. It's an emerging technology landscape. That's why we're trying to stay agnostic and interoperable. Because by next month, by next year, there's going to be other platforms. We're seeing cross-industry collaboration, and we're seeing other folks come in, right, from even the gaming industry to say, I can build something with better fidelity, more functionalities at a lower cost. But again, if you're stuck in a monolithic stack, how do you get folks to come together? We got to go north and maybe northwest or northeast, but at least we're trying to get everybody to go north together. And then we'll try to fine tune that, right? But to really do that, you've got to be able to save that progress like Kyle was talking about. And so this is really our roadmap, our efforts. Look at the top tabs. Foundation, we had to set that straight, right? Global company, sites everywhere. We had to stop the site inefficiencies. And really to do that, again, was to capture, store, deliver, consume, interview, and started understanding, well, really, what is that data set? What is the interoperable format? What's the visual fidelity that you're going to get? What is the dimensional accuracy, right? And what are those use cases? So if I'm using a mobile scanner, our sites should understand that they're going to get accuracy within inches. You should probably use it for planning or scoping. And so after we stopped those sites' inefficiencies, obviously we started trying to decouple that data, as Kyle mentioned, separate software from data. So to separate that, we started realizing, well, reality capture, let's work on that foundation. It's reality, and you understand, you guys, we're preaching to the choir here, right? But those are some of the use cases that we've tackled from there. Turnaround planning, routine maintenance. You get dumb dimensional data, and you're able to visualize it to be there without being there. Phase 2 is what we're at this year. I think last year we were calling it hills, but we started changing the phases just to make it a little bit more easily understandable. But it got to, reality capture was one of the modalities for that foundation. Let's work on the engineering model, not only from component level, but also at asset level. We started going through those, same thing, guardrails and services and so forth. We'll talk more about that, but what does a handover look like then? Between projects to operations. Oh, there's another gap. Okay, let's try to fix that then, right? And at the same time too, what is the foundation for that 3D model? And so that led us on this journey for use cases like virtual assembly, and same thing with additive manufacturing. When we got those foundations laid in place, we started integrating that 1D and 2D data. It's that Venn diagram that Kyle was talking about, really the data aggregation and visualization where it crosses. That's where we're at for 1D and 2D integration, right? Be able to integrate that data led us to, well, what about our geospatial tags? Because the minute you start visualizing something, you just want to start labeling things. You start wanting to tie other data integrated with it, right? And that's what we're talking about, because that work, that effort that you've done, the training you've done on that one platform, not going to leave. There's a new platform that you have to retag, right? Relabel, retie, and so forth. Mechanical integrity is that use case for us. Tying in our risk data, our maintenance data, and all other system sources to really give us that visual way of working. Wouldn't it be a lot easier if you're able to visualize your assets and understand things by color codes? Oh, red. You should probably pay attention to that first. Yellow's a warning, and green is healthy. And now we can just dive in deeper if we needed to, versus sifting through all the documentation that we have and trying to correlate that together. Next year, we're moving to phase 3. That gets us with RTS, OTS, right? We're gonna push the boundaries quite a bit. We're gonna look at operator training, try to scale out AR as we've really laid down the foundation for our visual data, as well as geospatial tag database. There's things that we wanna do like location services, so that way understanding exactly where you are and what you need at that time for our folks at the operators, right? At the operators to keep them safe in the field.
So I got a quick question. I saw people nodding on the aspect of I want to be able to tag information to be able to pull more, towards it. More context at the end of the day. That's all of this is what it's doing is driving more context. Are others struggling though whenever it comes to I want to tag inside of the platform? How do I set boundaries for that? How do I govern it? How does it not become just another set of points that I'm just dropping into a space? Little raise of hands. Any others that are struggling with that? Yeah, cool. Okay, good. Just wanted to gauge that. Oh, you're having problems with that. All right. So we talked about components of a digital twin, and this is components of the ecosystem that we're building here. And really, all this is meant to do is just to tell you, here are the biggest work efforts that we're trying to pull together across the company to be able to move towards scale within the ecosystem. For one, Em mentioned it before, even on the previous slide, set guardrails and guidance. What are the standards? There's a lot of good standards that are out there that we're following, that we've actually built out playbooks, and we're updating our global practices to be able to move towards the future of that. But to be honest, there are some gaps.
We love them so much. I think we adopted them all, didn't we?
Yeah, standards. I've got a sheet of 10 standards on one page, right? But right, end of the day, guidance, guardrails for sites. The biggest thing that we're trying to do there is allow our sites to move faster than we probably can directly, right? Let's allow them to be able to grow, but grow within some type of guardrail. That's essentially what we put that together for. Services, this is our aspect of how do we pull together service providers that can help do this for us across the globe. At a scale of our size, being able to do it is, if we do a single entity or even a few, is actually really hard. And at the end of the day, we have to have some type of consistency across the data. So that's goes back to guardrails, but we're building out services for the sites as well. Storage. If you heard the panel before, this is, I think, a big missing piece. I know it sounds so simplistic, but the storage of the three-dimensional information to be able to be used in any platform is a big gap. That's one of the things we're building, along with that storage of geospatial tag information across all of our sites. Platforms. So again, we're going to use platforms. There's a lot of them out there for different use cases, all specific to particular platform use cases. Biggest ones Em mentioned before, so I'm not going to go through those again. Use case enablement. For us, one of the things that we breathe by is actually saying that we don't know that we're right all the time. So we've done ROI calculations on all of the use cases we're working on right now. But we're constantly working with sites to understand what are other ways to be able to look at this. Are there better use cases that are going to provide more value over time? And then interject those, right? You've got to have a process to be able to adapt as fast as possible. External engagement. We're here, right? I think the biggest thing that we're trying to do here is we're both trying to be influenced by the industry, but also influence the industry on what are some of the pain points we're having to help solve it together. We've got a couple of different efforts that have gone on there. One where we pulled together all of our industry peers on the goal of an open asset digital twin. So all the Shell, Chevron, BP, Dow, and you name it, are on this mission with us together to build open and interoperable asset digital twins. Workforce enablement. This is an actually really interesting one of how do we staff up appropriately inside the company. How do you leverage services in areas where you need services? How do I leverage skills inside the company to be able to drive that? Near and dear to our heart, we've got a pedigree of a bunch of really, really talented folks. And then governance. At scale across a large company, nothing good happens without governance, especially whenever you're working across an entire ecosystem of people and not underneath one particular purview.
All right. So take that wheel and just flatten it out, right? This is what was done last year.
Should have done an animation.
Yeah, they should have done the animation. But the guardrails is really simple. We've established those site guardrails for our sites, right? And it wasn't through us alone. It was a crowdsourcing effort with all sites globally to really understand, right? And so we learned together What is that piece that's inoperable? We've got documentations in-house already thinking about not only at metrology, reality captures, right? 3D model, control points, etc. Services, we've got an ecosystem of service providers. Folks that sites can now trust to understand that they're going to capture our data correctly and place it in the correct storage that we want. Storage is really simple. Kyle mentioned it. It was a 3D content management that we thought we were just pursuing, but then we realized we need a geospatial tag database as well. Platforms, I told you it was a whole bunch. Reduced it down to just a few. Use cases, remember when we started the slide and Kyle was like, pay attention to move into a visual way of working? So we always make sure is, when we do talk about this internally, don't focus on the big word. Focus on the little ones. Move into a visual way of working. And if you understand that, what happens is sites come back organically with ideas of, this is what I do today. This is how I described it. These are the hours it takes, how many people it takes to do that. Now, if tomorrow I worked visually, I would do it this way, and these savings would quantify the reason for that use case. They just came in out of the woodworks. We have tons of them. There's multiple. So external engagement, as he said, right? We've been working with collaboration on industry white paper. Just grab us. We're happy to forward that to you. That's actually out in the public as well. We've joined multiple consortiums, the Digital Twins Consortium, ARC, National Center of Simulations. We really got exposed to the DoD and the gaming sector as well. Learned quite a bit from them. Workforce enablement, like you said, it's just an in-house skill that we're trying to just make sure that the folks that came in and said, hey, I actually code video games on the side. I actually do modeling on the side. These are my hobbies, right? I didn't know I can actually make a career out of this. I do want to learn how a scanner works. I do want to, photogrammetry interests me. Well, come learn that. We made a skill family to make sure that's a career for you. And governance. There's a whole life cycle of our 3D assets. The reuse of that data, how do we make sure that we're able to govern that globally across sites so that way we don't have that regretted work? That's what has been done to date.
All right, and now we'll jump into like the last little piece of that kind of recap area. This is actually a slide that Nick Peterson put together. He's actually in the front of the crowd over here, around the typical 3D life cycle. It's perfect, right? It explains why we have a problem, right? You go into that design and construction phase, all of these documents are governed in some amount of 1D, 2D, 3D, and reality capture. In transition to handover, there is no governance in operations around 3D or reality capture at this point in time that's globally scalable. So you lose that. So what happens is sparsely you'll get information. Sometimes you beg, borrow, and steal to get that handover, that handover correctly. But there's a gap there, right? And then that exacerbates itself once you head back into operate and maintain. Because again, we're going to have to go out there and scan. We're going to have to go out there and model. And that's going to happen. So you've got regretted work. You see, if you go from the top to the bottom and look to the right-hand side, I'm missing stuff. So what do I have to do to fill that in? Do it again. So I have to do the same thing that would have happened in the handover documentation in the first place. Again, that's a big thing that we're working on. That trickles itself way back into planning and reuse of information all the way around the life cycle. But that's we talk about the governance and how we're putting all these things together. One of the big pieces is how do we actually manage reality capture in 3D in our processes, in operations for the future. So we're putting, again, those global practices together, and the goal is to move all this information into our own processes.
Okay. You caught up to speed now?
New stuff.
All right. That was last year up to what we've done. Remember to capture, store, deliver, consume, the 4 pillars? This is how we're working now. We've identified capture, store, and deliver as our foundational efforts that need to be continued to be worked on. Same thing with our use cases. That's really on the consumption channel. How are you consuming that, right? You're going to output that, integrate that data. What are those use cases and so forth? So we leverage our MTech DIA process. Discover, incubate, accelerate. And you can kind of see those use cases right there, right? Where the stages they're in. We have a conversation with folks to understand what is the value, what are the inefficiencies. Let's discover that together. Then let's find that technology. Let's work on these processes. Let's collaborate across organization. Let's incubate that at a site and prove that out. Once all that checks off, let's scale it. Let's accelerate it. We've got members in place, like Mr. Peterson over there, to help us really scale that across our ecosystem. So things like virtual assembly, additive manufacturing, we're already at scale for that. Training, on the verge of it, pretty much. And things like digital procedures are things that we just started to explore. We'll talk more about that. You'll see that in our use cases as well.
I want to hit on one part of what does it mean to be at scale, right? At the end of the day. And what does it mean to be incubating these things and doing innovation? At the end of the day, we have a large number of assets. We have a large workforce, and that workforce is constantly looking for new ways to do work. Sometimes collaboratively, sometimes individualistically through the sites. So this whole process is set up to say, hey, sites, we love what you're doing. Come to us. Let's understand if we have something that's ready to move from just one or two sites to something that's actually scalable across our fleet. And what we'll do is we take all that, massage it in, and say, let's build standard practices to be able to actually go to scale across the company. And that takes time. That's a difficult task that takes a bit of time. And we're trying to make sure that the ones that move to scale are the things that have ROI, that have consistent processes that we can easily create consistent processes around. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff that we've done, even in collaboration with individual sites that have not moved to scale, mainly because we can't figure out that scalability feature. Here's two of the reasons. We talked about the aspect of foundation and use cases, and on that foundation side, there's a lot of stuff. So this is just focused on how do I get information spatially aware and be able to manage that across the globe. And we see two missing things. And again, correct us if we're wrong. Please come up to us and tell us that we're wrong here. One is a 3D content management system. A true content management system that is independent from platform. Again, we said it before, there were many, we've shrunk it down to a few, we're gonna expand back up to many again once we solve this problem. That's the reality behind this. And that comes to agnostic storage of models aligned with our site governance. So we've got a whole governance around how site process unit are set up. And really, for scale on those 3D assets, this is the only way we're going to be able to reuse information. The right-hand side one, geospatial tag database. We did not want to build this thing at first. We want to work with industry on a standard data model for how do I tag my assets in reality. And that could be points, polys, lines, right? It could be shapes. Technically BIM in certain scenarios, right? And there is not a data model that allows us to move between one system to another, that allows us to capture those points in space that I've tagged in one platform in reality and move it to the emergency response application. So that's a big one. It really is, that's a piece that's going to help us unlock reusability for the field. So connecting both remote engineers to the field and allowing them to see the same information, yet it be in two different applications. Because the reality is that happening in the same app right now is most likely not going to happen.
I think we got now. All right. We made it to the use cases.
Time-wise.
So let's just jump right into it, huh? I think this is pretty straightforward. We
And
do
these are
want
probably
to,
all relatively straightforward to the crowd.
yeah, share it out, right? Especially to this crowd. We use our digital reality for navigation and familiarization at its simplest form. Take a mesh 360 panel for that Google Earth experience, or even a drone. They get images at heights from topside that you can't see, right? Just be able to familiarize yourself with those images already. There is already value in the corporation for that.
Obviously, reality comes with other information, whether it's 2D or 1D data. But the power of being able to lay over a plot plan, a blast zone, a firewater map on top of reality in space on control, it's beautiful, right? You're bringing extra data to allow context to be received. I keep on saying the word context because that is literally what we're doing here, is bringing extra layers of context to information that may exist or may not already exist.
Planning, scoping, design, troubleshooting. You know what they all have in common? You gotta take measurements. Did you know that used to be a full-time job for us here at ExxonMobil for someone to take those measurements physically? We use the digital reality now really to take measurements. Dimensional accuracy is a big deal for us, right? And honestly, just to be there without being there and to take those measurements have improved our efficiencies quite a bit.
Turnaround planning and logistics. The simple aspect of bringing in a rudimentary CAD model of a crane and putting it into reality, and being able to do my planning for turnarounds, to doing simple temporary piping layout. Josh is actually going to probably talk about a lot of these use cases coming up next. I think it's the presentation right after this. But that simplicity of having a governed control on site of reality and being able to layer in extra information so I can make decisions faster.
Projects.
Same.
Combine your CAD and reality capture. It almost like gives you superpowers, right? Because I know exactly, just take a picture of it and then align it with what was planned. Was it there? Is it in the right location? Where are we on that status, right?
We like to coin this, will the couch fit?
Yeah, well
does the couch fit?
Yeah, basically. But I mean, just combine both of those data sets, right? And then there comes the conversation again visually to know exactly, well, this is already installed. This is not installed. We were delayed. We're off by this amount of measurements and so forth. But you can have that conversation intelligently now.
Visual inspections. I assume a lot of folks in here either are folks that do visual inspections or they're leveraging them. Drone captures. But drone captures at scale that are capturing an actual mesh of a model, but at the same time doing AI to determine if there is a missing bolt, damaged installation, corrosion, and tying that into a 3D model that gives you, again, more context. And you can see these, red, yellow, green little nodules that tell you whether this is a thing that you should be worried about or not. Normally, you're going through a list of inspection items and trying to determine what I should actually pay attention to and what I shouldn't. Just the context of relational information. If I've got a hot spot of like 10 reds, I got a big problem on that area, even beyond what the inspection item is showing. But that same thing, it shows you all the context automatically. It's actually a beautiful thing whenever you can tie it together, AI and a digital twin, drone capture, all into the same thing.
Yeah, I'd rather see that visually versus sifting through files of JPEG images and then trying to understand where that anomaly is, right? Tie it. Again, it started mattering for us of where things are captured. Then place that into digital reality. Wouldn't it be cool? Actually, if you ever have the AR device in the future, you're like, oh, you can actually, that'd be pretty cool. But
Google Maps.
Yeah, so at heights, instead of at heights, let's go internal, right? Similar technology, The green things, these spots you see are really just the trail of that drone that goes in to give us our internal visual inspections. So in this one, I believe this is the catalyst bed, right? And really what we're doing is providing more context, as Kyle said. Where did that drone go? Where did it stop? What did you scan? What are the images that you captured? Did you find any issues and so forth?
We bundled this all up together. So, part of our history was we did a bunch of really cool things 10 years ago or so, over the last 10 years, and then we realized we had to find a way to go to scale. But immersive technology has its rights in areas. From training, it's massive. It's actually transformed our whole training program on things that should not happen in the real world, allowing you to experience that in a digital and a virtual environment. Bringing that to operators that haven't seen those things before, and you don't ever want them to see it, so that it actually gets into their brain, they understand it. To design reviews on assets, so a collaborative design review, either pre-feed or feed, and allowing engineers from across the world. So I think there's ones where we had Milan to Houston to Beaumont and back and forth on assets, being able to collaborate between each. The connected worker and allowing us to get our remote engineers that are across seas access visually instantly to an environment. And there's many different levels of that, from just giving you an image or a video live to a person, all the way up to allowing you to integrate data and information on control. Construction progress tracking, that we mentioned that before a little bit, the project side, overlaying reality with the digital or this aspect of will the couch fit?
Augmented procedures in the field. How many folks shop at IKEA?
Yeah, I think so.
Ooh, someone loves IKEA over there, huh?
That's IKEA fanboy.
Yeah, I love IKEA as well too. But whenever you buy something from IKEA, you get that little guy, and you probably get an Allen wrench, right? And you got a step by step, right? It might be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 pages. In our world,
are a good thing to go by.
Yeah. but in our world, right? We've got pieces of equipment we don't take apart very often sometimes, and those steps are not like an IKEA step. They're pretty detailed. So how do we make sure folks are doing it correctly, safely as well, so that they won't get hurt? Let's digitize our procedures. Let's tie it to our 3D asset and possibly animate it, so that way they are following those things correctly, step by step, being verified, right?
Ooh, okay, cool. This is perfect. So now we're going to jump into a little bit about our vision of reality first. I think we talked about it last year, but a lot of folks probably weren't here. Really, if you look at traditional digital twins of the past, and the current right now, a lot of them start with that aspect of CAD, so an engineered model, and the source of data is tied back into that engineer model, and then you visualize your information. But if you actually look at the life cycle of an asset, like a full asset, the input of information of that engineering data is actually input into the model from other systems, and then actually when it goes back into operations, it's pulled back out into other systems. So it's really, that CAD model is a conduit, right? It's a conduit over time. But if you look at right now into probably another raise of hands, if you were to look in your ops and maintenance side, your ERP systems, on what's actually tracked, this is probably what it would look like. Is it you'd have less context, again, that word keep on popping up and down, and that's a problem point. That's something that we need to solve as both an industry internally to our companies, but also a thing that we need help with. But again, reality. So this is a scan of Josh will probably talk about this particular one. A scan of an asset down to, I think, 1/4 of an inch. It might be an 1/8 of an inch. Don't quote me on that right now, but the whole goal is you get more context. You instantly get more context. And I'm on control, so I can layer in the CAD data. So I have extra information that I already, that I can bring to reality, bringing everything together spatially versus bringing it together to a source of 3D. And the beauty is, whenever either if I don't have a particular CAD model behind it, right, or an engineered model, being able to tag and give context to that and tie it to all the other data sources. that are out there, that all of the operation, ops and maintenance data sources for engineering and inspections and equipment. This is the beauty. This is where we're moving towards, is reality first, spatial first, information that all gets tied together based off control.
Location. We're going from parcel level all the way down to component. But as Kyle mentioned, right, we haven't had figured all that out. We just realized we needed that database. But on that journey too, right, capturing reality and which coordinate system down to even that you're tying it to, from global to state to local, right? How do you translate that? But we're trying to track that from parcel level all the way down to that bolt down here. It's about 7 decimal places, and we've been talking to some of the industry leading experts. It's something that we're trying to collaborate on to make sure that data is interoperable as well.
One thing I wanted to go back to on this is this does not mean engineering modeling goes away. It actually means we're probably going to do more of it, right? You're going to do it on the areas that make sense versus just building an engineered model across the entire facility. So it'll be focus based.
We get asked that question quite a bit, so I know he's incorporated it into his speech now. This is reality.
It's possible. It's not just possible, it is happening.
When we had the conversations with the plant managers, trust was a big issue. The frequency of capture, the fidelity of it. My guys are still going out in the field because things have changed. How do you update that model to make sure you can trust it? Not only what things look like, but where things are and when it was captured, to gain that trust for our sites globally. And what we realized was reality first. Take a picture with an extra dimension. It gives more. Keyword today is context. Exactly.
Context is king.
So.
All right, call to action. So we don't want to leave you with just saying, okay, hey, we just shared a bunch of stuff. In those areas, we've split out specific things that we want to work with the industry to get help on. That capture space. There might be a conversation today, tomorrow, over a period of time of how do we get to industry standards, and not just on the standards part, but how do we actually have training and certification that allows us to get consistency. Because again, we've got a large number of sites. We need to be able to capture across all of them. We're not going to be able to use the same provider every time. That, the other push in that capture space, we're seeing, I brought up my phone earlier, we're seeing a crazy move, not just for accuracy in terms of dimensionality, but being able to give people visual information from our phones. The NERFs are Gaussian, what are they called? Gaussian plots?
Gaussian splatting?
Yeah, Gaussian splats. Like the world is transforming faster than we can even manage the control of the data that we have right now, right? We've got terrestrial scans, we have drone scans, we've got mobile scanning, and now we have these phones in our pockets that can capture information that gives us extra detail and context. We're going to continue to push that. We need to be able to figure out how to bring that into the fold. How do I bring things that don't traditionally have control into the fold? It's going to have to happen. Storage. We talked about it earlier. We need to be able to have interoperable 3D content management system. And we need some data model across all of our industries around how to store geospatial tagged information.
Delivery. Segmentation, because we chose reality capture first, right? Everybody knows what point cloud data looks like here. We don't have to explain that piece, right? But when you want to start tagging that reality capture, I wanted to understand exactly that when I touch or tap on this, those set of points, they actually become an object. I need that segmented automatically, not by hand.
Yeah, this isn't probably new to the crowd, but that automation and a process that is efficient enough to actually invest in.
Right, and same thing with classification as well. This is a chair. This is a heat exchanger. This is a valve, because people are going to start doing that. Well, let's automate that in the delivery. Let's make sure we segment it correctly down to a certain level that we need with I believe 80%.
80% is wild.
80% is
But hey,
question.
shoot for the moon, right?
Right. And consumption. I mentioned it before. It's an emerging technology landscape. There will be platforms out there. We must stay agnostic and interoperable if our mission is to corporate scale and integrate an ecosystem of digital twins across the corporation.
Last little thing to hit on here before we jump to a video that we hope you all like. There are other communities that are working on this stuff. So again, we'll talk about training, certification, all those things will probably happen in conversations today, tomorrow, over a period of time. But there's also these other industries that are built periodic tables, from data services to integration to intelligence, UX, management, trustworthiness. Those types of frameworks are already being built. We need to work together, right? Instead of recreating things over and over again. So this is one of the consortiums we joined. Encourage you to look them up and understand it a little bit more in detail. But we see a lot of promise there. We actually built a spatial and visual working group to try to move forward on that data model for geospatial data. So,
all right, folks. Said it last year, still saying it this year. We appreciate your time and listening. We've got a video coming up. Our AV friends in the back will probably pop it right after this, but ExxonMobil has moved to a visual way of working. Please play that video.
From laser scanning to virtual reality, 3D models and other digital data captures are quickly becoming must-have technologies in our industry. Globally, ExxonMobil has spent tremendous resources on independent 3D efforts, from capture to creation, and even purchased visual assets. These 3D models help us gain better insights, make informed decisions, visualize disparate data, and streamline innovation. However, many of our 3D assets are stored in various locations and used locally when they could be leveraged across ExxonMobil facilities. As part of a company-wide initiative, we're establishing a digital reality ecosystem, which will serve as a foundation for our 3D visual assets platform. This ecosystem will help us capture 3D models in formats that everyone can use, centralize where they are stored, and automate the way they are delivered, so they can be used by anyone, at any time, from anywhere. This ecosystem will allow us to move toward a more visual way of working with contextualized data, which will be essential to our success for corporate scale and integration, now and in the future.
Thank y'all so much.
Appreciate it.
If you want to scan our QR codes, that'll bring you to LinkedIn. Thank y'all.